Welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we will look back on the pop cultural ephemera that remains in our cultural zeitgeist today and try to understand why we remain enchanted all these years later. This week, we will be revisiting...
No, go easy on the wee one. His father's gonna go crazy and chop them all into haggis.
What's haggis?
Boy, you read my thoughts. You've got the shinning.
You mean shining.
Shh, you wanna get sued?
trick-or-treating, bobbing for apples, wearing costumes, carving pumpkins. These are the classic Halloween traditions. But today, we are talking about another Halloween tradition, one that's been around since the early 90s, and that is the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Every year, we are treated to a new set of usually Halloween-flavored parodies of pop culture through the satirical lens of Matt Groening's magnum opus. But before we get into the details of the Halloween Treehouse of Horror specials, we have a special guest today. This is our first time having a guest on the podcast, hopefully the first of many. And I don't know how I managed to swing this guest, but it's my sister, Amy Baum. Say hi.
Hi.
All right. So since this is a nostalgia piece, I know that we both love The Simpsons. That's why you're here.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about like where The Simpsons fits in for you nostalgically? Like, what's your first memories of it, and then specifically the Halloween stuff?
I'm pretty sure I've watched it since the beginning. I think Dad had a tape of like the sketches that were probably from the Tracy Ullman show.
Really? Okay, I don't even remember that, but go on.
I remember watching that first Christmas one where they got the dog.
The pilot, yeah, that was
Yes.
the pilot episode of The Simpsons.
And then I'm sure I watched it pretty much all through elementary school, junior high, high school, probably some of college. Probably by law school, I really wasn't watching it as much anymore.
Yeah, well, that's most people. The golden age of The Simpsons is really from, I would say, about season 3 to, like, if you're being charitable, maybe season 13, which is not to say that, like, modern Simpsons is bad. If you dip back into it, there's usually something there to enjoy. But, like, that early, what's I guess now the first third of the run, that is truly, I think where The Simpsons lives. Like, that's the best stuff. My memories of it, obviously, are not too different from you since we grew up in the same house. But I definitely remember being on board from, like, episode 1 and really loving that first season because at the time, there just was nothing like it. There was no primetime animation. The closest you got to anything approaching that level was, like, the Flintstones being basically a straight ripoff of the Honeymooners, but it was all dinosaur puns and stuff and rock puns, and it wasn't witty in any particular way. Like, this was the first time that primetime animation had been done and actually was not just a success, but like a monster success. The Simpsons was a phenomenon even in its first season.
Oh, of course. I don't remember cartoons of the 80s ever being that witty. I mean, I was pretty young.
I mean, when we were growing up, like, cartoons were for kids. There was the closest thing you got to any kind of cartoon that was meant for adults. There were a handful of weird ass, like, there's like that Ralph Bakshi movie, Fritz the Cat, which is like an X-rated cartoon. And that heavy metal cartoon that's like, a good 45% boobs. But that's, not witty. That's just, it's got kind of grown-up content in it. Or maybe there were things like Doonesbury as like a strip, a political satire cartoon strip. But for animation, like, yeah, everything from our era was just, here's an action figure, go buy it. Like, go buy a Transformer, go buy a G.I. Joe, go buy a Ninja Turtle. Which is not to say those things aren't fun, and on a nostalgia podcast, we'll definitely talk about them at some point. But The Simpsons is a different animal entirely. How about the Halloween stuff? Do you remember when that came around? Because it actually shows up in the second season when they did the first one of those episodes.
Right, because this was actually reviewing for this was probably the first time I really watched it on Disney Plus. I mean, they show reruns on, I don't know, FX or something. But yeah.
Which Disney now owns.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I'm like, because I think I was like looking for the ones we're reviewing, and I was like looking in season 1, I'm like, there's no Halloween one here.
No, yeah. I mean, season 1 is, if you go back and watch it, it's a much more much closer to what you would call a conventional sitcom.
Right.
They didn't figure out what they were, I think, really until definitely sometime around the beginnings of season 2, and definitely into season 3. They started becoming very self-aware and realizing, like, oh, we can use this medium and these characters as basically like almost chess pieces on a comedy chessboard to do certain things, to make certain points, to tell certain kinds of jokes. So, like, to plug my other podcast, A Podcast But Evil, we did an episode on Mr. Burns, and we kind of talked about how Mr. Burns is basically just an equation, which is like these old people jokes plus out-of-touch billionaire jokes. And maybe like just evil jokes. And that's it. Like, that's all Mr. Burns is as a character for the most part. Every once in a while, The Simpsons will surprise you by trying to wring pathos out of these characters. But generally, it's literally like Homer writes on his hand, Lenny White, Carl Black. Like, to some degree, that's kind of what they are. They are just, these tools to use for satirical purposes. So tell me a little bit about, again, your experience with the Halloween episodes. Like, when you first, what do you remember about them from the 90s?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I remember enjoying them. I remember them being very funny. I mean, horror wasn't my go-to genre back then. It still wasn't. So, I mean, some of the ones, like, obviously, like, one we're going to talk about is The Shining. Obviously, when I watched it back in the 90s, I thought it was funny, but I hadn't seen the movie yet.
Well, that's true for a lot of these. I think,
Right.
we were not at the right age to have recognized the source material, and even if you knew what they were parodying, you maybe hadn't seen it. That gap kind of got filled in later as I got older and saw these movies and went back and was like, oh, okay, they're doing this Twilight Zone episode that I had never seen, but maybe had heard of. But the Halloween episodes themselves were always like an event. Like, that was it was easily one of the best episodes of the year.
Oh yeah, and they always had the twist endings that were always fun.
Well, and they had the freedom to do things out of continuity, and that's not to say that Simpsons has much in the way of continuity. Every once in a while, they will make a permanent change, like a character will die, or
AKA Maud Flanders.
Maud Flanders will die. Marvin Monroe will die. Bleeding Gums Murphy dies, or like Apu has kids, and then the kids are a part of the show.
Yeah.
But generally, the Simpsons continuity is syndication-based continuity,
Right.
where everything at the end of the episode has to be exactly as it was at the beginning of the episode so that they could be shown in any order and no one would care. The Halloween episodes were obviously their freedom to go, we can do whatever we want. It doesn't matter. Grandpa can get his head chopped off in this episode. It doesn't matter. He'll be back in the next one because we all know this is just for fun.
Right.
And that just opened them up to so much more interesting things. Do you know what the inspiration for these Halloween episodes was?
I don't.
Okay. So I looked this up. I was curious as to why they started doing them and doing them this way. The inspiration is actually from EC Comics, which was a comic house that was mostly known because it created Tales from the Crypt. And that's what these are. Like, these are basically just like Tales from the Crypt. If you ever saw the TV show, the original comic strip it was based on was, you'd have some kind of framing device of, the Crypt Keeper or a host, give you a bunch of weird short stories, stuff that was, more dark and violent than you could get away with in an average comic, and it was generally more disturbed stuff. And so the producer of The Simpsons really liked this stuff, and they said that's going to be our template for how we're going to do a Halloween special. And then we got to the first one. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on the technical stuff of like who wrote what episode or what order they go in. I just pulled a handful of episodes for this podcast that I thought would be, well-known ones, fun ones. And again, all from that first, 9 or 10 years of the show. And you watched them all. I watched them all. So if we don't get to your favorite, I'm sorry. But there's a lot of these. And I just picked the ones that I thought were the most notable. Where do you want to go first? I definitely want to save the Shining for last because that's the best. I think that's the best one.
Yeah, I kind of watched them in the order that you told me to.
Which was the random email I put together where they were literally said in no particular order.
I don't know. Actually, no, I didn't do it exactly. I think I searched through Disney Plus and did it that way, whatever.
You did them in chronological order.
That's
I think that's probably how I ended up watching them, just kind of going, oh yeah, I pulled one of the ones from season 3 here. Maybe we should talk, I think maybe just for continuity's sake, I'm going to pick Fly versus Fly.
Okay.
To talk about first, because our last episode of this podcast was about the Jeff Goldblum movie.
Right.
So Let's start there. You want to just tell us a little bit about the Fly versus Fly?
Okay, so it starts off. The Simpsons are at a garage sale by Professor Fink.
Professor Frink.
Yeah, Frink. That's right. Yeah, kind of that Jerry Lewis-ish.
Another thing we didn't know as kids, like, oh, he's just doing Jerry Lewis from The Nutty Professor, a movie we would not have seen. This is another thing that's notable before we even get too far into the episode, but like, this is a really standard Simpsons thing where like the first third of the episode has nothing to do with what the rest of the episode is. It's all just like a little adventure that leads to a development that gets to what the plot is actually about. And it's like, here we get like that as a microcosm for, what is a third of the length of the running length of the episode. So yes, they go to a garage sale and they buy
the teleportation device.
Yes, the telepods, which I forget how he describes them, but like he's already trying to warn them that like he's only selling them for like, what, 50 cents?
I think it was 35 cents.
35 cents, or Homer like talks him down.
I take it from that little impressed noise that you are interested in purchasing that matter transporter, sir.
$2, and it only transports matter. I'll give you 35 cents.
Sold, but I must warn you, this device carries a frighteningly high risk of catastrophic...
I said I'll take it.
But yes, they take it home, and of course we get what of course you would expect to happen with a teleporter. They abuse it.
Right, Homer is like using it. He puts it in different rooms. Like, I'm going to reach into the refrigerator. I think at one point he puts one of them in the bathroom,
so he can pee into one. So it flies out into the toilet. All the Homer things you would expect him to do. But it is not Homer, of course, who has the teleporter accident. It's Bart, who goes in and comes out with the head of a fly.
And notably, he does this on purpose.
That's right. That was a big difference from the source material. It was not a teleporter accident. He did it on purpose. After, I think he put the
dog and the cat go in there on accident, I think. And they come out, the two heads.
One is two heads and the other is the two butts. Yeah, and so there's some not. This is mostly based on the original version of The Fly, not the Cronenberg version with Jeff Goldblum. But I think the dog and cat spliced together is that's sort of a nod to the Cronenberg one because it's more body horror and weird. But the Bart Fly head body swap is the original. By the way, have you ever seen The Fly?
No, and after hearing your podcast, I'm not sure I want to.
Interesting, because my memory of The Fly, as I talked about, was Dad using it as a punchline for every movie that was like, we shouldn't watch this. Mm-hmm. It was always the stand of like, well, we could watch The Fly, as knowing that would be funny because it was, we were not young enough to watch it. So it is an amazing movie. You should watch it, although it's hard to watch. All right, so Bart does the swap. We get Bart is like at the breakfast table. He's sucking down syrup, which is again kind of a nod to the Goldblum one, where he's drinking a cup of coffee with like 15 spoonfuls of sugar in it. And then what's kind of funny about it is it just sort of like peters out, right? Like they swap him back, right? Eventually they do the help me bit, and they just swap him back, and it's kind of over.
And then it kind of, I think the end was kind of funny where Homer's like, oh, this is like like a device that's too powerful, and he looks like he's going to destroy it. But then he, of course, goes to, kill Bart.
Yes, right. It can't be allowed to exist. So you can just kill Bart. I like this one. I picked it mostly because of the fact that we had just done an episode on The Fly. But it is kind of this is the most simplistic version of a Halloween Treehouse of Horror. They have a very clear, target in mind. We're doing a spoof of this one particular story, and they just sort of package it up, Mad Magazine style, and just go, here it is. Here's a parody. So where do you want to go? What was the next one on your list there that you've got?
I kind of want to talk about Time and Punishment.
This is a classic. Time and Punishment, for those who don't know, this is the one where Homer, he damages his toaster and in rebuilding it makes it a time machine. And then we get all this really fun butterfly effect shit where he goes back in time. He, kills an animal in the Cretaceous period, which then results in a present day being wildly different each time as he tries to, put time back the way it was. This one's really fun because it lets them do, it's sort of like they put a lot of mini episodes into the thing by doing like, okay, we'll do, Flanders' future dystopia. And then we'll do what was there? So before we get to It's Raining Again, which is
Yeah, that was
amazing.
the best one.
That's the best one. There's another one in between there, right? Oh, there's the Maggie kills groundskeeper Willie and has James Earl Jones's voice. This is indeed a disturbing universe, right? There's that one.
There's that one. There was the thing where they're all giant.
Oh yeah, so he comes back for some reason. Yeah, he's in the house and he thinks he's normal size, and it's like a dollhouse. Like the kids open it up and like they're gonna eat him or something, and he runs away. And then after several of these, we see I like where they show the house changing. Instead of having Homer like go through the shtick each time, they're able to cycle through a bunch of quick jokes. But like, it's their house. It's the Simpsons or the Flintstones house. It's they keep changing the way their house looks from the outside. But then we get to he finally comes back. His house is a mansion. Everything looks perfect.
Hey.
Good morning, Father dear. Hope you're well. Are we taking the new Lexus to Aunt Patty and Selma's funeral today?
Fabulous house, well-behaved kids, sisters-in-law dead, luxury sedan. Woohoo! I hit the jackpot! Marge, dear, would you kindly pass me a donut?
Donut? What's a donut? It's raining again.
And it ends with him. I think he gets home, and everything looks normal except everyone has these weird long fork tongues, to which the button on the sketch is close enough. Yeah, that's a good one. I couldn't figure out what it was based on. Like, it didn't seem to be based on a very particular time travel story. It just felt like it was based on
just the genre in general.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is what we know about time travel stories. Every time travel story is basically about how do we either change the past or prevent it from changing so that we don't destroy causality. So go ahead. You got another one there? We got a lot of these, but
okay.
I thought we just run through because they're fun.
Let's see. How about Clown Without Pity?
Okay, Clown Without Pity. Again, this is the one with the evil Krusty doll.
Yeah, is this supposed to be based on Bride of Chucky?
I thought too. That's what I thought when I watched it. I was like, oh, this is clearly they're doing a riff on Child's Play. But I looked it up. It's actually based on a Twilight Zone episode. A lot of these are based on Twilight Zone episodes, and this one included. But yeah, I think you almost don't need that. I mean, because the concept of evil doll that tries to kill you is so Chucky. But it doesn't have the whole gimmick behind Child's Play is that Brad Dourif is a serial killer who dies, and his spirit is like bonded to the doll. So it's like he's like basically reincarnated sort of as this doll. That element is not in the Simpsons episode. It's just a toy that he buys from this weird blue man, vaguely Oriental stereotypes.
So it's like, but if you're buying your kid a birthday present in an occult shop, what else are you going to get?
Well, that it also reminds me a lot of Gremlins. The guy they buy the Mogwai from in that movie. Same vibe, and he goes through that whole shtick about there's almost Abbott and Costello routine about the.
Take this object, but beware, it carries a terrible curse.
Ooh, that's bad.
But it comes with a free Frogut.
That's good.
The Frogut is also cursed.
That's bad.
But you get your choice of topping.
That's good.
The toppings contain potassium benzoate. That's bad.
Can I go now?
So they managed to find these weird, like Simpsons-esque comedy beats, even in the middle while they're trying to like barrel through a parody or something at lightning speed. They're still able to do these weird little detours, which I love about the show. So yes, they get the doll home. It tries to kill Homer over and over again until they finally call customer support.
And I love that the number is 1-900-DON'T-SUE.
Don't sue, yes. The Simpsons is one of their satirical things. Like whenever they satirize the legal system, and of course we're both lawyers, but whenever they satirize the legal system, they always do it really, really well. Is this the one where Lionel Hutz is actually called in and like sues the company? That's a different one.
No.
Where Lionel Hutz gets involved. Okay, so we'll save him for later. But yes, the customer support comes in and says, "Oh, there's your problem. The doll switched. It has like a good and evil switch, and he's just switched to evil."
I don't know. I kind of felt like that was a cop out.
They're all cop-outs. I mean, a lot of these things do. I mean, they have to wrap it up in 7.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it is a very funny idea because after they switch him to good, they just abuse him. He's just schlepping food back and forth.
I think he had to give Homer a sponge bath.
Right. He has to do it every time.
Yeah.
But he gets to come home to Malibu
Stacy.
Yeah, in the dollhouse. So yes, Clown Without Pity, another a good really standalone bit that's just one concept done very well. Okay, what else you got there?
Since we were kind of talking about the legal system, do you want to move on to
this? Is the one I'm thinking of, The Devil and Homer Simpson. So the plot, if you will.
Okay, so of course, Homer's basically dreaming about a donut fashion show, and it kind of looks like he's at Fashion Week in Paris or something, but it's all donuts.
Yes, they're all donuts with sexy gams walking around.
And then of course he wakes up from his dream, and there's no donuts left.
And he says, "I will sell my soul for a donut." At which point, Flanders appears. Their nosy neighbor who is very religious. So he's of course as he says, the person you least expect.
Right.
And so I love that. So I remember this taking longer, but so they do this bit where the bargain is if Flanders gets his soul if he finishes the donut. So he hits on this clever idea of well, I'll just leave one piece and not eat it. And then that night he eats it. I remember it being dragged out longer as for how long he manages to go without eating the donut.
Yeah, but I just love when he's I'm smarter than the devil. I'm smarter than the devil.
Yes, and they do this amazing so the Simpsons animation is obviously it has to be on a TV budget. It's I don't know how much of it they use computers to do and how the shortcuts they take, but every once in a while they kind of will let loose with the animation. And so Flanders morphs into this Night on Bald Mountain demon and screams, "You are not smarter than me!" And it's just so cool because every time the Simpsons would do something big with their animation, it would really feel like there'd be a good unexpected punch from it because it's oh, that's usually not what they do. They're usually more talking heads, less wild takes and the stuff you would associate with Looney Tunes or Ren and Stimpy. They wouldn't do that stuff in animation. So very, very cool. He's, of course, sent to hell to the ironic punishment division and forced to eat donuts forever, which does not bother him in the slightest. He just gets fatter and fatter as he eats.
I don't know. I think to Homer Simpson, that would be more of his idea of heaven.
Yeah, it's just a fun. The best joke about it is not that, okay, we get it, he likes donuts. It's whatever the demon says, where he says something this drove Shelley Winters mad in 10 minutes or whatever that. It's that, they find a way to put an angle on it that's a little bit smarter than just, oh, he eats donuts and he's fat. They add that bonus. So then we get the trial with Lionel Hutz, the world's worst lawyer. And Marge prevails by proving that Homer wrote a note to her saying, he gave his soul to her, therefore he couldn't sell it to the devil.
Hear ye, hear ye. The Court of Infernal Affairs is now in session.
Very well. But first, some ground rules. Number 1, we get bathroom breaks every half hour.
Agreed. Number 2, the jury will be chosen by me.
Agreed. No, wait.
Silence! I give you the jury of the damned. Benedict Arnold, Lizzie Borden, Richard Nixon.
But I'm not dead yet. In fact, I just wrote an article for Redbook.
Hey, listen, I did a favor for you.
Yes, master.
John Wilkes Booth, Blackbeard the Pirate, John Dillinger, and the starting line of the 1976 Philadelphia Flyers.
And the jury of the damned rules in her favor.
Yes. Oh, that's right. The jury is all it's Lizzie Borden
and Benedict Arnold
and a bunch of hockey players or something.
Yeah, that I didn't get.
I didn't get that either. I meant to go look that up. I was like, did something happen with the 1970 whatever Philadelphia Flyers? What did they do?
Yeah, I don't follow hockey, so.
I don't know if there was a thing where they pulled over their tour bus and beat a bunch of people up. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I should have looked it up before this podcast, but I wasn't feeling the research and the detail this week. So that's that one. This one,
but it does end with he does have a donut head.
Yes, the end we have to talk about. Yes, so even though he beats the trial, the devil still punishes him anyway by giving him a donut head. This is one of my favorite images in all of The Simpsons. It's just Homer with this donut head, and he's got a bite, what looks like a bite out of it or something. And Marge going, "Stop picking at it." But
I'm so sweet and tasty.
It's so sweet and tasty. That moment just stays with me. I don't know why, but like whenever I think of like, there's many moments in The Simpsons I will think of nostalgically. That one's way up there for me.
That's a good one.
I don't know why, but there's something so ridiculous about him. He's going to literally eat his own head and die. So yes, that is another excellent one. Excellent. What else you got?
How about Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace?
Okay, I picked this one. Yes, it's a good one, but also my wife is a big fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, so I thought we got to do the Nightmare on Elm Street parody. Now, have you seen any Nightmare on Elm Street movies?
Sadly, no. Like
Really?
I said, I really should watch this. Like I said, horror is not my, go-to genre. I mean, I've seen, I like The Shining. I've seen Carrie. I've seen The Exorcist scared the crap out of me. I was very disturbed by that movie.
I love horror. That's one of my favorite genres. But I didn't get to a lot of horror movies until I was a little bit older. Nightmare on Elm Street, I don't know if I had seen any Nightmare on Elm Street movies by the time this episode came out, but I might have seen one of them.
What year did this one come out?
Oh man, I don't have that on my
Somewhere
fingertips.
in the 90s. If I was in...
The last Freddy movie is Freddy's Dead, and that was still maybe 92 or something. So I think at this point, we were all out of Freddy except for that new Nightmare movie and Freddy versus Jason. But what's neat about Freddy, I mean, that character was so everywhere and so ubiquitous. You never needed to see any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies to know everything you needed to know to get this episode.
Right. I mean, I haven't seen the movie. I got it.
Yeah. The one thing by this point, Freddy had already become a parody of himself. That already started in by the time of the third movie. The first one is still scary and is still it's just an excellent film. But Freddy pretty quickly became a cartoon character in this series. And it's still fun. It's enjoyable to watch those movies where, essentially Freddy is Bugs Bunny and everybody else is just a guy waiting to get an anvil dropped on his head. But it does lose a lot of its power to scare. But this one with Groundskeeper Willie, one thing that's cool about it is, every beat about this is basically the same as A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original one, where he comes back from the dead by haunting kids in their dreams. And the kids are trying to stay awake as best they can, and then hopefully use some form of lucid dreaming to take control of the dreamscape and thereby best Freddy, or in this case, Groundskeeper Willie. The thing I like about this one is that they dramatize the death, which they don't actually show in any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's just talked about. Freddy was this child murderer. He quote, got off on a technicality, so the legal system failed. And so the parents went vigilante and burned him to death, and now he haunts their dreams. The scene where they sort of do Willie's death is so funny, and I loved it so much. And then when I actually got around to watching the movies, and they never actually did, I was like, this must be a parody of some scene that never actually happened in Freddy continuity. Although I think they did do it eventually in some, they did this Freddy TV series, an anthology series. I think they did a scene where he died in that. But the best part about it is just that, he's on fire and, who's it, Principal Skinner, it's just, tells him to sit down and, wait his turn to talk.
But it's so but he's, trying to open the doorknob, and then there's, in the PTA meeting, it's we need to talk about, money for faulty doorknobs, and then, something about the fire extinguishers, and the fire extinguisher doesn't work.
Willie, everything is a result of, I think Homer accidentally makes the boiler go, up to, high power.
I think it says don't touch Willie. Ooh, good idea.
Yeah, don't touch. Yeah, he misses
it.
This is another recurring thing. Is a punctuation joke. Don't touch, comma Willie. Homer reads it as just don't touch Willie. Similar to free consultation. No, money down. The Lionel Hutz joke where he does that with punctuation, and then everything escalates from there. Right? It's like you said. The school votes down, more budgeting for doorknobs or something. So the doorknob doesn't work and Willie can't get out of the room. And they keep doing that and escalating it in a way that, again, very much satirizing, local government, the public school system, being strapped for cash. They package all of that into this very short scene that's also just independently of the satire. It's just really funny. I think that's one of the best parts of the whole episode. And it's just kind of a masterclass in the way The Simpsons would construct a joke.
Do not touch Willie. Good advice.
Our next budget item, $12 for doorknob repair. We charge fire extinguishers. This is a free service of the fire department.
Nay.
Help! Please help me! Willie, please. Mr. Van Houten has the floor.
I, for one, would like to see the cafeteria menus in advance, so parents can adjust their dinner menus accordingly. I don't like the idea of Millhouse having 2 spaghetti meals in one day.
Really, really impressive. But yes, of course, at the end, they blow up Groundskeeper Willie in the dream, and then they're all fine. And then they do this weird ending where, like, Willie just kind of walks up to them in the real world and, like, shakes his fist because, like, he got off a bus to threaten them, and then the bus drives away without him.
And then he's like, I forgot my shotgun. Don't go anywhere.
Right, he runs away. It's sort of a nod to the way the original Nightmare on Elm Street ends, because there was famously a lot of back and forth about how to do the ending of that movie, which, since you haven't watched it, I won't spoil it. But it is a very ambiguous ending that's kind of like, well, wait, did they get Freddy? Did they not get Freddy? And not in that horror movie way of like, ooh, maybe he's still out there. It's straight up just confusing. It's like, wait, what are you trying to say, movie? Are you trying to even tell me this is an ambiguous ending? What the fuck is actually happening? So I think that kind of works. So yeah, that is A Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace. You've got, I see the Genesis tub written there.
Yeah.
We can do the Genesis tub?
Sure.
Go ahead and tell us about the Genesis tub.
Okay, so it starts off, Lisa is working on her science project, and she's saying that science has already ruined smoking, alcohol, and Chinese food, but now she can ruin soft drinks for everybody. So she's, she has this little tub, she has the tooth, she's pouring cola in there, and then Bart shocks her with static electricity, and when she touches the tub, there's she shocks it with static electricity. And then when she goes to bed, and then she wakes up, and she's created a whole universe, and she sees cave people in there.
Yeah, and they're, like, evolving rapidly. So, like, every time she goes back to the little tub with the tooth in it, like, first they're like, yeah, they're cavemen peopled out in there. And then they're, like, having a little renaissance. And then, like, before long, they're, like, more advanced than we are. They're having a future society.
Very futuristic.
Once again, Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, I actually texted you and asked, like, what is this based on? Because I didn't know.
It's a Twilight Zone episode, sort of. This is an idea that actually, like, clearly the writers loved this, because there's an episode of Futurama, Matt Groening's series, follow-up to The Simpsons, that basically follows this same concept, where Bender is somehow launched into space with, like, this thing on his, like, front. I forget exactly all the details, but basically the same thing starts happening. Like, a tiny civilization arises on Bender as he is drifting through space, and then I think they eventually end up, like, warring with themselves and, like, annihilating themselves. But it's literally the exact same bit. But I do like this episode a lot. It does have another one of my favorite lines, which is, "It's toilet time for Tiny Town," because Bart threatens to destroy him. And at the end, they shrink Lisa down because they think she's God, and she just basically ends up stuck there. That's the end of the episode. What did you think about this as like a satire piece?
I mean, I didn't even know what it was satirizing, so.
But I mean, not that it was. Well, yes, it's different, but what it's satirizing is different from what it's spoofing, right?
Right.
So, like, yes, it's doing the plot beats of this Twilight Zone episode, but they're trying to, I think, say something about, like, our society and religion and stuff.
Right. The fact that, like, Lisa literally created life, and they see Bart as the devil.
I love when, like, she says his name and they just, like, shudder and they're like, oh, Bart.
Yeah, like saying, I mean, yes, this was pre-Harry Potter, but it was like saying Voldemort.
Yeah, the reaction is the same. You shall not speak his name.
Yeah.
Very funny. It also reminded me of this weird, did you ever watch that claymation Mark Twain thing?
No.
Okay. There's this weird segment. There was this, I don't even know who made it, but there's this claymation thing where it's like, the adventures of Mark Twain. And they're on some sort of weird spaceship. And I don't know what the fuck is happening because it's been so long since I've seen it. But it had a lot of little, like, segments in it that were, like, micro versions of Mark Twain stories. And they did this one bit off of a story called The Mysterious Stranger, which is, like, the kids who are, like, the protagonists of the thing. It's, like, basically this empty space with the creepiest angel, quote unquote, you've ever seen, who, like, you realize pretty quickly is Satan. and he proceeds to like make these little like clay people and then like destroy them. Like go Google Mysterious Stranger, Mark Twain, claymation or whatever. You will find this thing. It's like this super creepy thing in the middle of what is otherwise like a pretty like tame kids cartoon. But it reminded me of that because, again, like tiny civilization being destroyed.
Yeah, there was something about the coloring of the civilization that I was trying to like pinpoint. Like it was like almost like Yellow Submarine vibes, but not really.
Yeah, it does have that very like kind of retro future look to it that I think The Simpsons like. Like sort of like the Jetsons, right? That kind of aesthetic. So yeah, the Genesis tub, another classic of Simpsons Halloween fare.
If we're gonna go stick on Twilight Zone, how about Homer 3, Homer Cubed?
Homer 3, yeah, Homer Cubed. Yeah, I don't even know what this is specifically satirizing, other than maybe there's that story Flatland, which is literally about a 2-dimensional shape who is suddenly is introduced to a 3-dimensional world. Very very simplistic kind of a social commentary piece. But yeah, basically the whole bit is that Homer, trying to get away from a visit from Patty and Selma, finds a portal in their house that leads to a 3-dimensional world where he is a CGI rendered version of Homer. I picked this one. It's actually not one of my favorite episodes. I don't think it's that funny. There's a few funny lines in it. I think Frink is funny, where he's trying to explain what a cube is to the other cartoons, which is funny. And I do like Chief Wiggum, the police chief, trying to solve the problem by literally just enough of your borax, Poindexter. Take that, you lousy dimension. Just shooting bullets at the portal. So there's some funny stuff in there, but I think it is notable for being this CGI fest.
Well, because
in the
I
90s.
CGI was kind of relatively new at that time, I think.
Super new. Yeah. I can't remember if this was before or after Toy Story. I think it was after, but not much. And yeah, to do this obviously on the Simpsons budget would have been a big, big deal, even though it's only probably all told, maybe 3 minutes maximum of 3D shots. But really interesting for them to kind of try something new that way and play around. I did like some of the fact that it's really just kind of a void space that's full of you just bouncing Euclidean geometry and math equations floating around.
Somehow there's a koi pond in there.
There is a koi pond. After all that, yes, there's was it which Homer calls unprocessed fish sticks?
Yeah,
yeah,
that was funny.
AKA fish.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have asked Mom freeze frame stuff because our mother is a math teacher and said because sometimes The Simpsons definitely Futurama would do this if you took the time to look at an equation, it's actually a joke in the background. If you understand math, it's a joke. Which who does that? But yeah, so that's Homer 3D. I do like where he ends up at the end, which is where does he end up at the very end?
The real world.
Doing what?
He's kind of scared at first, and then he finds a bakery with erotic cakes.
Yes, that's a very 90s joke. I feel like the erotic cake store has. That was I felt like it was an SNL punchline and stuff for a long time. That is no longer a thing. All right, so I'm looking at your notes here.
Bart Simpson's Dracula.
Bart Simpson's Dracula. Okay, this is awesome. This was obviously hot on the heels of the Francis Ford Coppola version with Gary Oldman and his giant hair butt. That movie is not good, by the way. I've tried to like it, but man, Keanu Reeves. I love Keanu Reeves. I think he's a great actor in the right role, but you put him in the wrong role, and he tries to do a British accent so hard in that movie, and he so fails. And I can't accept the reality of this movie. No one talks that way. So yeah, I like this one. If you want to talk about some of your favorite moments from the Dracula episode.
Okay. So of course, yeah, they I think it starts they're watching the news and there's news of the undead Mr. Burns donated money to a blood bank or something or a blood bank.
Yeah, and he's got blood on his lips or something.
Yeah.
As he
and the Simpsons get to go to his big house in Pennsylvania.
Yes, in Pennsylvania. That looks like Castlevania. That shot of the castle is that's straight out of a Castlevania game.
Right. So of course they go to the house and he gives them, I guess it's quote unquote punch. It's really blood.
And they don't even try to hide it. He's just oh yes, it's blood. And Homer's free blood or whatever he said.
Yeah, and then Bart and Lisa go nosing around. They find the room with all the, tombs, and they find the vampires, and they run. And of course, Bart, is swayed by the super fun happy slide. So the stairs turn into the slide.
Yeah, he just slides right back down into where all the vampires are and gets bit. This episode has one of my favorite Simpsons drawings, like individual frame, which I feel like I want to use and promo the art for this episode. It's he's floating outside Lisa's window and he wants to bite her. And he says something about blood. And as he says it, it looks like his head goes the wrong direction from the rest of his jaw. It's just a very funny drawing that I love. It's so because obviously any drawing that happens in The Simpsons is a deliberate choice. Somebody has to go through all the trouble of not just drawing that drawing, but all the drawings that lead into it and out of it. So there had to be an okay of yes, we want Bart's head to do this totally unnatural thing. It's one of my subtle favorite things in it.
Yeah, and then of course they realize, if we have to, we want him to get back to normal, we have to kill the main vampire, which is Mr. Burns.
Right. So they go back
and they kill him. I remember this scene being very funny. So of course they have to drive the stake through his heart, and first he drives it through his crotch, and then he drives it through his heart. And this stuck with me. The fact that he basically dies and then he kind of wakes up and goes, "You're fired," and then dies again.
Yeah. The timing on that is really good because they go through the whole grisly vampire turning to dust animation, and then just when they undo it for him to do that, it's at 4 times the speed. You're fired, and then go back. Homer they really. He's one of those characters that, like I said, these characters are all sort of comedy chess pieces, and Homer is stupid. That's one of the easiest jokes to make. Is oh yes, Homer is dumb. They sort of throttle it how dumb is he? Depending on the situation, they can make him real stupid. And this is one of those times where he goes, "Take that, vampire!" And like you said, he drives the stake through, and Lisa has to tell him, "Dad, that's his crotch," which means looking at a human shape, he cannot tell the difference between where your chest is and where your crotch is. He's that stupid. So it's a really just funny joke because they sort of just the way they deliver that beat.
Yeah, they did Homer being stupid in this one very well because even after Lisa tells him, Bart's a vampire, he's like, "Lisa, you and your stories, Bart's a vampire, beer kills brain cells. Now let's go back to that place where our beds and TV is."
Yeah, right, exactly. They dial him way into the stupid for this one, which is fine because they're cartoon characters. Right. And it doesn't matter. But yes, they have. Then of course it doesn't work because they have to kill the head vampire, which is actually Marge, which is a great twist.
Yeah, they're all vampires.
Yes, the whole family is. Yeah, even Grandpa is floating around as a vampire.
Yeah, actually, that bit with Grandpa I always remembered was really funny.
How many times have I told you not to bite your sister? Wait a minute! You are a vampire! Quick! We have to kill the boy!
How'd you know he's a vampire?
He's a vampire? Ah!
Yeah, I forgot about that. That is good. That is another all-time favorite line for me, which is Grandpa just wanted to kill Bart with a steak, which is great. We're running out. I think we've gotten through most of it. Oh, we didn't do the dolphin one.
Yeah. Okay, I don't get what this is. I just have at the end of my notes, "What the fuck?" with a bunch of question marks.
I know. This is a later one. This is from maybe season 11 or 12. It's just so weird that I felt like we had to talk about. There's a lot of there was definitely a point where they did a bunch of things that were not obvious horror stories. They did fairy tales. They did a Harry Potter one.
They did Twilight. They've done Twilight. The Great Pumpkin.
Well, those are all still somewhat. Harry Potter's definitely not. They've done some others that are very much the not Halloweenish, but they sort of crowbarred it in.
Right, pop culture. But Harry Potter has Halloween
elements
in it.
Witches, I guess, and wizards, but it's not. I wouldn't consider Harry Potter to be Halloween fair.
No.
This one. So this is based loosely on three different things. So the general inspiration for this, the general plot is Lisa sets a dolphin from SeaWorld loose, who then rallies his dolphin friends to go take over humanity and kick them into the ocean instead. The basic inspiration for this is this is called Night of the Dolphin. The original thing is called Day of the Dolphin. But it's not exactly a horror story. It's about a guy who trains dolphins And then, like, the government steps in because they think there's military applications for trained dolphins. And then something about, like, they're going to train a dolphin to kill the president. Like, it sounds I've never seen it. It just sounds super dumb and weird. So I know that's part of it, just the idea of using, I was telling a story about dolphins. But there's two other things in it that are definitely more well-known things. There's a bit where Lenny gets eaten by dolphins.
Yeah, they kill Lenny. They kill the sea captain.
Yeah, but the specifically the scene where the dolphins kill Lenny is Jaws. Like that is is like the way, like the colors, the way it's shot.
Oh yeah, don't they like have this shot with the fins?
They have the fins. Yeah. They have like the moon. Because if you remember, there's this famous scene in Jaws of a lady, pretty early in the movie, who gets eaten swimming at night, and so they're really trying to evoke that sequence. But that it's not a straight up Jaws parody. It's just for this one scene. And then at the end, they do a bit that's very much Hitchcock's The Birds, where there's just dolphins everywhere. They're like perched on, playground equipment and on buildings. And the people are just walking silently as all the dolphins stare at them. But again, not a strong parody of any one individual thing. This is one. They do this from time to time where they will like lash a bunch of different ideas together, and this is one of them. But it is very weird, and it does have a nice moment where the dolphin, makes it to the town hall, and he, knocks the mayor or whatever who's speaking away from the podium, and they're like, oh, he's going to speak. And the dolphin goes, Snorky, talk, man. I'm very sorry. Let me start that over. And then starts speaking normally, which I liked. But yeah, I don't know what I see your note said, WTF. Any other comments?
It was just like the most like random thing. Like, I kind of wrote like Free Willy Gone Dark because I guess the beginning has that free.
Yes,
he has the moment where the dolphin is like diving over her.
Yeah, she helps him escape. They like doing this bit where Lisa's like kind of politically left leaning do-gooding ends up causing some huge problem in a way that's like not actually a satire of those beliefs. It's almost like the satire of the satire, where it's like, no, we should be helping dolphins. The joke is that it causes mayhem. It wouldn't do that. So I did like that aspect of it. Just a weird, and I'm also thinking like this is only like 11 or so seasons into this. Like, there's no shortage of like Halloween stories they could do parodies of. They're only doing 3 a year. Like they hadn't touched, Michael Myers yet. They hadn't done.
Right. It's been a long time since I've watched The Simpsons. I mean, like I don't remember them ever parodying like Carrie, which I feel like would
they might have. Again, we've got like 20 seasons we haven't watched Halloween episodes for. I know this year they're actually doing 2. They're doing like their usual 3-part thing, and then they're doing a second episode that is an entire It parody.
Oh wow!
So
I don't know if I want to. I mean, The Simpsons isn't as good as it used to be, so...
I don't know. And actually, I feel bad for Julie Kavner. I feel like her voice is going, and it's like, oh, let her stop, please. She's going to die of throat cancer. Please. You're killing this poor woman. All right, so that leaves the Shining, right? That's the last one?
That's the last one.
Okay, good. This is the best one, I think, of
Absolutely.
all time. Yeah. And you've now seen The Shining.
Yes.
Okay. The Shining is, for my money, one of the best horror movies ever made, because the horror in The Shining is like, for all the supernatural elements, the most horrific thing is like abusive dad.
Right.
That is the scariest thing in the movie. It's just Jack Nicholson being, unhinged. But it does have a lot of great iconography, and I think they pack so many jokes into a Shining spoof that is, like I said, it's like 7.5 minutes long. They managed to hit pretty every major thing in the movie. They don't do any of the like creepy twins, and they don't do like the Room 237 full of like guy having sex with a person in a bear costume.
No, but like they get the blood. They have Maggie where she writes like she spells redrum with the blocks.
Right, she spells red rum. They do the bit where the caretaker shows them around at the beginning. It's burned, but they even do the long tracking shot. Like they decide for all the things they're going to parody in The Shining, they're willing to spend a lot of time. In the first minute of that episode, they do the whole thing where they the long drive up to what would be the Overlook Hotel.
Well, it was a long trip, but we're almost there.
Homer, did you remember to lock the front door of the house?
Don't! Well, it's been 2 long trips, but we're finally almost there again.
When you locked the front door, did you remember to lock the back door?
Don't!
Oh no! We left Grandpa back at the gas station. What about Grandpa?
And then they just leave him behind.
Yeah.
Which, in a very smart thing, they actually call back to later in the episode. He shows up. You know,
Right.
like, you know, after everything's gone crazy. You know, Homer's like,
Here's Johnny! Don't! David Letterman!
Hi, David. I'm Grandpa.
Don't! I'm Mike Wallace, I'm Wally Schaefer, and I'm Ed Bradley. All this and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes!
usually on these things, they don't have much time for that level of like structure or callback. So the fact that they did it here is really impressive. While they still got across, they did the, you know, Groundskeeper Willie is the Scatman Crothers character who tells Bart about his shinning. They have the time for that. They do, you know, the no beer, no TV make Homer go crazy.
Yeah.
They really just do all of the things from The Shining, and in a way that's like, they still manage to work in a lot of characters, because The Shining, you know, basically has 4 characters in the whole thing. I guess, well, you also have the ghost. So you have Mo as the bartender. You know, really, and they obviously duplicate the look of the, you know, the movie in terms of like the hotel,
definitely.
the bar, the carpet, the structure of the hotel. Like when he's coming up the stairs after Marge with the bat, they're doing that sequence. Like it's the drawing looks like, you know, the set of the Overlook Hotel. It's really, really like meticulous. Any other favorite moments from the Shining that you want to talk about?
I love, like, obviously, like, when Groundskeeper Willie tells Bart, you've got the Shining. You mean Shining? Shh, want to get sued?
The other thing they do, is this, in this particular episode, they do a running gag where in each of the 3 segments, Groundskeeper Willie dies with an axe to the back. And they did that on purpose because, not just because it's funny, but because they really wanted to kind of needle the censors at Fox. At this is only, I think it's only in like maybe the 2nd or 3rd Treehouse of Horror, so like the 4th season of the show. And at this point, The Simpsons had really become kind of this flashpoint for like, you know, was it George H.W. Bush, you know, kind of called out The Simpsons as being, you know, the opposite of a model American family, and, you know, all this, you know, like how, you know, The Simpsons was leading people down a dark path, yada yada, because it was evil, and, you know, setting poor examples and stuff. Basically because in the first season, Bart was a little troublemaker.
Well, he was always a little troublemaker. I guess,
but like, you know, it's so tame, you know, compared to like South Park and what Family Guy would do later. You know,
absolutely.
It's not even close. It's so gentle now that we look back on it. But this was their way of, at some point, they got into their heads that The Simpsons was too violent, which definitely, like, no violence ever happens in The Simpsons, except for these episodes where the violence is, you know, it's expected because it's a horror.
It's Halloween. So.
Yeah, and none of it has any weight to it because the characters getting decapitated and maimed has no continuity. They're just back in the next segment. It's
right.
No different than, you know, like, Wile E. Coyote getting crushed by a rock. You know, it doesn't mean anything. But yes, that is specifically why they do the 3 acts to the back bits with Willie, was to up the violence, just to kind of stick it.
So kind of a big FU to the censors? Or?
Yeah, they actually have. So at the beginning of these episodes, there was always like, at least at first, they had like Marge or one of the other characters, they would come out and like introduce, you know, hey, this is our Halloween episode. And at first it was always like Bart or Marge telling you like, oh, this episode might be a little scary, you know, for you, which was, you know, again, very quaint. They kind of dropped that after a while because the writers said that we were running out of ways to have somebody come out and do that. You know,
well, after a couple of seasons, it's like, is it really necessary?
Well, and how many jokes can you wring out? But they did do one where, and I remember it was one of these episodes we watched, but like it begins with like a censor at a desk.
I think it was this one.
Was it this one? No, I think it was. Oh. Is it this one? It could be. But yeah, he's like looking over a script and like going like, oh no, and he's like, you know, crossing things out. So again, part of just the meta of the show, them willing to just kind of poke fun at that, you know, very directly. But that is the Shining. I think I've looked at a lot of like lists of like people will like take polls or critics will try and talk about which is the best of these things. The Shining usually tops the list. I think because it's so expertly done and so dense with jokes. There's so much stuff that they if you're going to parody The Shining, like you said, it's amazing they can get as much of that story and spoof as much of it as they can in this short amount of time. And so when I think of like Halloween nostalgia, like, and I want to watch, Simpsons Halloween, Treehouse of Horror, I will go back to these. I usually won't even watch the recent ones. I just want to go back and see these again because it's sort of like, it's almost like a nice companion piece to the real movies and things that these are based on.
Oh, of course.
So, like, do you have any favorite Halloween like movies that you do watch? I know you're not as big on horror, but is there anything that's like, oh yeah, it's October, I got to put this on?
Well, of course, now I have a son who's about to turn 5, so what we're turning on in our house is like for Halloween is pretty family friendly.
Well, yeah, I mean we've been doing, what's it? I like the Disney Sleepy Hollow. That's a big favorite for me. I would put on the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Oh yeah, we just showed that to Joel. Yeah.
Okay. Did he like it?
Yeah, he actually sat through it.
Okay, it's pretty slow.
Yeah.
As I'm watching, it's shorter than I remember, but it feels longer.
Yeah, I was like, it's only 30 minutes.
It doesn't feel like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's pretty slow. It's the Peanuts.
Yeah.
But is there any like movie that is actually like more on the scary end of the spectrum that you would watch? We did our episode on Beetlejuice. That one's up there for me. That's right there. That's a comedy. That's it's a little different. But it's
I don't.
Very,
I mean, The Shining is obviously very well done. I don't know why, but for some reason I have seen Carrie multiple times.
I assume you mean the original one.
Yes, the original was SpaceX. Yeah, no, the remakes are terrible.
Yeah, I liked Carrie. I just remember thinking like, it really just boils down to that one scene. There's not, up until that happens, there's like some creepy stuff, but it's like, The Fly is actually sort of structured the same way, where it's kind of like there isn't a lot of like scares. There's not. It's just like this is going somewhere bad, isn't it? You just keep watching, this is going somewhere bad, and then like in the last like 3 minutes of the movie, it gets there, and you're like, this is in fact very bad.
Well, probably the most disturbing thing from Carrie for me is probably the mother. It's that abusive mother element.
It's Stephen King, writing what he knows. Yeah, this Stephen King stuff is good. For me, like Halloween, I'll usually at least one slasher flick has got to be in the mix.
Oh yeah, Scream is really a spoof, but I've seen
Scream,
3 Scream movies.
Screams are good. I like, I actually like going back to the Simpsons stuff. The Twilight Zone has aged extremely well. And it's like, it's never scary, but it's always kind of like scary in a thought-provoking way. Like, it makes you think about, like, it's unpleasant to think about mortality.
Right.
It's unpleasant to think about how time is slipping away. So the last thing I did want to mention before we finish is that, because Matt Grading loves this stuff, not only did they reuse the Genesis tub basically for a Futurama episode, but Futurama tried to ape this in a couple of ways. One, they did these anthology of interest episodes, which was like, well, we're not going to do Halloween, but we're going to do an episode that has like 3 standalone stories that don't affect the continuity of Futurama. So they had one where like, Bender becomes an actual flesh and blood human, or like, what would happen if this, it was all just like a what if scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So same structure. And then of course Futurama has the Scary Door, where they would do a spoof of a Twilight Zone episode, but instead of it being a 7.5-minute segment, it's like crammed into 35 seconds.
You're entering a realm which is unusual. Maybe it's magic, or contains some kind of monster. The second one. Prepare to enter the Scary Door. Please send the man round back and pick up Clyde Smith, a professional gambler who's about to have an unfortunate accident.
A casino where I'm winning? That car must have killed me. I must be in heaven. A casino where I always win? That's boring. I must really be in hell!
No, Mr. Smith. You're not in heaven or hell. You're on an airplane.
There's a gremlin destroying the plane! You've got to believe me!
Why should I believe you? You're Hitler!
No! Ava Braun, help me! Ah!
saw it coming.
But that kind of wraps up everything we need to say, I think, about the Treehouse of Horror. I mean, anything else you want to say about kind of your emotional connection to this stuff?
Emotional connection. Well, this is probably like the first like really like funny satirical cartoon that I remember watching, because it probably did pave the way for me to watch things like South Park. And I mean, I don't really watch. I've seen some Family Guy. I don't watch that regularly, but I've watched Futurama. So that probably just paved the way for me to kind of have, for that kind of like satirical sense of humor.
Well, yeah, and I think, there's other like, pushing even farther into, more adult-oriented animation, you get things like BoJack Horseman.
I haven't seen that yet.
BoJack Horseman is, very existentially dark. It's about, people, as funny as it is, like, definitely not for kids. And it's very much about, like, yeah, this guy's a washed-up actor struggling with, real, serious, unresolved traumas and things. But he's a talking cartoon horse. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to put it through that lens. Or there's things like Bob's Burgers. And there's all kinds of just, adult animation that, the boundary pushing that The Simpsons did. Like, there will now always be a place for animation that is geared towards an older audience where the form of animation liberates the creator to do things that you couldn't do in live action. So when I see these, like, every once in a while some tweet will make the round of like, animation's for kids, meh. I know they're just trying to get attention on Twitter, but it's also like, dude, there's so many examples to prove you wrong. Like,
I know. Like
cartoons are clearly not just for kids.
No, if you have a cartoon that's dropping S-bombs and F-bombs, it's not for kids.
Well, not just the content, but again, in terms of like, naughty bits, but the, again, like dealing with adult subjects.
True.
Like, and it's the ability to do that, again, because of The Simpsons, really without The Simpsons, none of this happens. But again, there are cool things that cartoons can do. Again, I'll just refer to BoJack Horseman as the best example I can think of right now off the top of my head, that like you couldn't BoJack Horseman would not work if you did it in live action, even assuming you took away all of the bits where like half of the characters are anthropomorphic animals, you just made them all people. It wouldn't work the same way. It just wouldn't be the same show, and you couldn't get to the same artistic place without the ability to use this particular tools that come with animation. So I think that probably is all we need to say about The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. So thank you again for dropping by. I'm sure we'll have you again in another episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let me do some admin stuff real quick. So one, if you like the show, of course, go to iTunes and rate, subscribe, tell your friends, drop a review there, all that stuff. If you've listened to podcasts, you've heard everybody at the end of a podcast tells you what to do, so go do it. And if you want to talk to us, go to @NostalgiumPod. That is on Twitter. That is where we're getting messages and stuff. We're also on Instagram. You can find Nostalgium Arcanum on Instagram as well. But the Twitter handle is going to be the main place to send us feedback for now. And let me just tease next week's episode. We've spent a lot of time talking about parodies this week. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about parodies next week because we're finally done with our Halloween stuff. But this episode comes out on Halloween, so it's time to say goodbye to spooky stuff. But we're moving on to Weird Al Yankovic, who I am very nostalgic for and have a lot of fond memories of and a lot of things to say.
Same here.
Yeah. So until next time, we'll see you in another entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
You're back with your family now where there's nothing to be afraid of. Except that fog that turns people inside out.
Huh?
Uh-oh, it's seeping in. Stupid cheap weather stripping.
One chorus line of people dance until they make us stop.
Two
many dancing people.